What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I hope you're doing well. Hope you're having a fantastic day whenever you're watching this. In today's video, we've got another suggested topic video. Now, on this channel, we're all about connecting people, all about connecting each other and everything like that. And one of the ways that I go about it is opening the floor to you guys. You guys are more than welcome to leave suggestions on any video, about a topic you'd like to see me talk about, something that you're interested in. Maybe you can hear my thoughts and we can share, back and forth in the comment section. And these are this type of videos. So if you're interested and would like a video on something you're interested in, feel free to drop it in the comment section below. And in today's video, we're actually talking about a very interesting topic. And I was not aware of this. Actually, I only became aware through the comment. And this is about why are kids cutting off their parents? And kids specifically being like, adult kids, I'm not talking about teenagers. And especially like in the age range, like the Gen Z is like, the kids of today basically. And then we have Gen X and we have millennials, so on and so forth. But today we're going to be exploring that topic. If you guys enjoy this video, feel free to drop a like. And drop your own thoughts, obviously, on this. I'm very interested to hear what everybody has to say. I will give my thoughts, but please watch until the end so you can hear everything formulated and listen everything and then drop your opinion of it, obviously. But yeah, let's get into this one, guys. I always, read the comment and then I go on from there. But yeah, let's get into it. Today's video suggestion is from Fred Sanford 111. Thank you so much for the suggestion. Let's get into the comment. The comment reads, my topic suggestion would be, why are adult children cutting off their parents? I get it, that some families are abusing their children, but I'm seeing a ridiculous rise of people cutting off their families because they are quote-unquote toxic, which is a very subjective term. If my children could even have a glimpse into what older generations had to endure, frankly, they'd crap themselves. I'd love to hear your take as a millennial or Gen Z as to why they are calling it quits instead of just telling their parents that they're angry or hurt and then talking it out and then moving on. They are just ghosting us and then pretending they like us to our face. I'm a Gen X and I mentioned earlier, the 70s and 80s parents, mostly boomers and some silent generation, were, let's say, not so loving and certainly did not spare the rod. I'm just going to read that part of the comment for today because that's what we're going to be focusing on, is about why are kids, or adult kids I should say, cutting off their parents or, severing ties. And I was not aware of this, but adult children, cutting off their parents and not communicating with them and just like severing ties. I wasn't aware of this until, we've got this comment today. And I did a little bit of research, I did a little bit of Googling to find out what was going on. And it is actually true. This thing is actually been going on for a while. So I'm just going to read a little bit of what I researched and we'll go from there. But like I said, I was unaware that this was happening and I wanted to find out, why this was going on. So I had to go ask Google, and I asked Google, why are kids cutting ties with their parents? And they gave me this overview, reading, kids cut ties with their parents due to severe issues like abuse, addiction, or mental health struggles. But increasingly, it's about protecting mental health, clashing values, and setting boundaries, fueled by cultural shifts, prioritizing self-growth, social media, and therapy, normalizing estrangement as self-care. It sounds weird a bit in my opinion. But anyway, let's go on. It said also, common triggers include parental conflict, lack of emotional support, abuse, which can be physical, emotional, substance abuse, deferring beliefs, and unresolved issues from messy divorces or neglect. Now, further in the comment, actually, I want to say Fred Sanford did say that this is not any of the issues, that they are talking about. This is not like got to do with abuse, got to do with like negligence, got to do with anything like that. It's just that for some reason, out of nowhere, adult kids will just up and like leave, and quit talking to their parents. And for me, it's so strange because I was thinking about this and I had to really think a long time about this because I'm so unfamiliar with that concept, I would say. And I think I want to really highlight what they say in the Google overview, which is about clashing values. I think, in my opinion, especially nowadays, there are a lot of things that are going on around the world, whether it's got to do with your sexual orientation, political views, anything like that, okay? Now, I know that it's already heated when you talk about those things to strangers. And I feel like maybe if you're trying to have a conversation with someone that's in your family circle, it could get tricky, You might be under a certain opinion and you might believe something. And you're trying to talk to this person, in your family, this family member that you've been living with, everything's been fine. And now you might say something that they find offensive and they don't expect it coming from their kid or vice versa coming from their parent. And now it causes this whole thing and it causes this rift just because of an opinion. And at the end of the day, we've got to realize and understand that we can be part of communities and part of connections and groups of people with differing opinions. I don't have to necessarily believe in the same religion or in the same views as another person, sorry, just to be friends with them. We can be friends just because of our relationship with each other. And I think that this notion, or this concept about cutting off your parents, even there in the overview, it said that this is promoted, for self mental health or something like that, which is so strange. And instead of not talking to your parents, you just cut ties with them. It's so weird. I think, especially when it comes to a long-standing relationship, having communication is important. Is number one. Is a key. Having open communication, saying how you feel, listening, and having a conversation. Not just yelling things out to them, of course, but talking to them and hearing their feedback as well and going from there. Now, it's good, to have a mediator maybe if things are very stressful environments and the conversation get very stressful. It's good to have, like, maybe you could have like a therapist there or like a mediator in between to kind of, set the tone and set the pace and let everybody talk to each other before things spiral out into an argument. But this is so foreign to me because, in my opinion as well, like, I would say I'm very close with my mom and my dad, like, they're like my best friends also. But which is so weird because they are like parental figures, but I'm so close with them. They just like, they're very cool, is basically what I'm saying. But what I'm trying to get to is that this concept, I think for me, as soon as I heard this, it also pointed me towards American like shows and TVs and things like that, where they always show the teenagers or like the adult kids are rebellious and are very strongly agitated towards their parents because the parents won't let them do something, and there's always this conflict, there's always that rift. Like, if you go back to a movie or if you go to a lot of TV shows that feature, parent and child dynamics, you always see it's like, oh, I hate you, mom, and like, I'm a word dad, why are you being like this to me? And I can't wait to move out and everything like that. And that concept about moving away as soon as you turn 18, as soon as you move off to college, you're just trying to get out there as soon as you can, which is so strange because, like, I'm very close to my mom and dad, very close to family. I'm a very orientated guy. And it's just weird thinking like that is what is being promoted. Maybe, promoted is a strong word, but that is so accepted, I guess, to just move away from your parents when you're 18 and, you maybe never hear of them. Maybe you visit once or twice, for like a Christmas or Thanksgiving or something like that. And I think that also causes, tension maybe because now there's this huge separation. You're not in the same house. And do the kids feel obligated, to go back to their parents? And how was the relationship before, building up from like primary school to high school and things like that? It's a very complicated and dynamic relationship of a parent and a child, because you look after this person, this kid, for so long. I'm thinking now from a parental's perspective, but you look after this kid so long and they're so close to you, they're a child and they love you and everything like that. And as they grow up, you see them start developing this personality, and you may be like, oh, okay, I didn't know my kid was going to be like this or whatever, but it's cool. I love my kid because it's my kid. And as they grow up and they start becoming adults, they start getting opinions and they start forming, relationships, and they start feeling some type of way towards you. They start finding out things about you because, when I can say from myself, from my perspective as a kid, as a child that has parents, I will say that I always saw my parents as just parents, mom and dad. That's it. To me, they had no lives. They had no personality, they're just mommy and daddy. But as soon as you grow up, and as soon as you become like a teenager, you could say, and even adult, and, later on in life, you start realizing that your parents are people, which is a strange thing to say, but they obviously are. But you find out that they're people, and you find out that they have a life before you, they have a life with you and after you and while you were growing up and everything like that. And things happen, between like the marriage maybe, or you see certain things and have arguments, or, things are happy, but, they want to talk about things, and there's certain things they don't want to talk about. You find out about your family, and this whole thing it opens your mind to like the whole family dynamic. And the whole time you just grew up in this family, unsuspected of everything. It's very strange because, like I said, I will say that the one thing I will advocate for is I will not promote like just severing ties with like in a relationship or even with your parents. But unless obviously the situation, like I said in the overview, it's said that unless it's like abusive, unless it's toxic and everything like that. But a lot of things also, can be viewed as toxic. And in this day and age, like, in Fred Sanford's comment, it said there's a lot of things that the generation of now won't stand up, or won't be able to handle, that the 70s and 80s kids and those forged, not the forged, I should say, what's the term I want to use, those line of men and women and people that were forged, in that era. Things were a lot harder back then, like they say, it was more of tough love, and there was hitting, there was the belt, there was the cane, there was the whoop, everything like that. Nowadays, you can like sue your parents for things like that, for mental, psychological abuse, for physical abuse. You want to give a child a hiding, they say no, and you're like, oh my word, should I give my child a hiding? It's such a different day and age we live in, and that's why I think it's so interesting to open this conversation, to open this concept, especially as far as like the age range is concerned, because obviously I'm 21, by the way. I'm 21, and I live in a different time where things like that aren't the norm. Certain things we're so privy to things being like, okay, we've got to shield ourselves. We've got to be very careful with how a person is, People are, I guess you could say, more sensitive, more fragile in this day and age, which if you told me that, I would agree with you, And do I think that things were perfect back then? Definitely not. I mean, there are definitely times where things went over the line. I mean, you can even talk about in school, Like I know in schools, things were like getting hit with the canes on their hand. And nowadays, you see how out of control the kids are in schools as well. Not to mention parents, but authoritative figures, It's just like a complete 180. So I think finding the middle or the median, about like finding out, okay, where is like this generation headed, How do we discipline this generation? But also, hear what they have to say and hear their problems and hear their feelings. But it's also, a lot of the things that are being promoted, A lot of things that are promoted is like, oh, we've got to like coddle everybody and da 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 da. And I understand that that's the way things are moving nowadays. So we can't just throw that out the window, We got to know that everybody is a specific type of person. Like I know there's a lot of things that are changing in the world, and a lot of people are kind of like being mind blown about how things are going, with whether it's like political stuff or everything like that. I'm not getting into that because this is specifically about parental and child. So what I want to say, basically, like I said, I just want to reflect there quickly about, I know this is a very long video. It's a very extensive and a very deep topic. So I want to give it the full, time and the full, thought that it deserves, because it's a very life-changing topic. I mean, cutting off your parents, I can't imagine like not talking to my parents, it's just like, it's alien. It's for me, it's unheard of, for someone that's like so close to my family. And even if we argue and even that happens, but we talk about it afterwards and we resolve our issues. And I can believe things that they don't necessarily believe in, and vice versa. We are allowed to be like that because my parents has made that space for me to do that, they made me feel like I can be open with them about anything. I can say, you know what, I think that I don't believe in X, Y, and Z, and maybe that's one of their core beliefs or whatever, but they're like, okay, Xavier, if that's how you feel, that you go that way, I mean, it's so cool, in my opinion, to be open like that with someone, and nevertheless your parents, but yeah. So I think a lot of people, like, I want to just summarize my thoughts at the end here, because this is a very extensive topic. You can have like a podcast, like an hour or something about this. Maybe I should like do like a live stream or something and talk about this open, and you guys can chat below, like while we have a back and forth and everything like that. But I think a lot of parents are being, blindsided, especially if there isn't any like abuse involved, if anything isn't toxic. It's just that kids are hearing about this like adults, and they're like, oh my word, you're right, I should probably cut off my parents. And the therapist is like, yeah, you should do that, a good idea. And like, oh, aren't they doing this to you, and blah, blah, blah. And that's where, you should know how you feel about your own parents, and you should be open enough to talk about them. That is the first step. Like I said, communication being the most important key, being key number one in order to having a healthy relationship in the first place. And like, that's, I think, why it's happening. I think a lot of things that are being promoted about mental health and self-awareness and self-betterment and improving yourself and everything like that, I don't know. It's very tricky to say for sure, because every situation is so different. Every situation is so complex. It's not just a copy and paste exercise or X, Y, and Z. This is how everything will go. It is different compared to every case. But if you're asking me like, how can we solve this, or how, it can be, like, say, for example, if you're going through a certain situation where your kids aren't talking to you and you're trying to find out why, maybe, I think you should try and have an open conversation with them. It should come from your side. If you are the one that's trying to not rekindle the relationship, but try and restore the relationship, because you maybe feel things have gone astray or things have gone, off course, I mean, and if there is some way, like I say, it's about being open and just say like, hey, kid, or like child or whatever, I don't know what's been going on recently, I feel like you're so distant. I feel like we're so far from each other. We used to build Lego in the dining room. We used to watch TV shows together. What happened to all that? And if this is over an opinion over something that I have about, politics or whatever, even something silly, is that really gonna blockade us from being with each other, being together? It's crazy, that this is the kind of world that is turning into, where parents are turning, or kids, I should say, kids are turning against their parents, and sometimes vice versa. But let's focus on that dynamic right now. It being so accepted, to do that, to just not talk about it, just bottle it up. And even in this day and age where we say, okay, we should talk about things, we should be more open, but we're not. A lot of things that we deal with, we don't want to talk to our parents about. We don't know how they're going to react. We don't know how they're going to see us in a new light once we say these informations, once we say this information to them. And that's the one thing you can't control, is how someone will react. And if they love you, and if they really are there for you, they will accept it, and they can move past it, and they can talk about it. Maybe not like completely, especially if it's something massive, If they can't, talk about it, or if they don't want to handle it in their way, let them handle it themselves. Talk about it with each other. Have that connection, maybe check in like once a week even. Even this goes out for kids as well. If you feel like you've been separating the relationship like from your parents, and if it's just been naturally going that way, I'm not saying if it's been toxic or whatever, but if things have just been naturally going silent for a while and you haven't heard from them, you should reach out to them. Give it a chance, Maybe like, obviously we just had Christmas, we just had New Year's, of course. Those are like the perfect times to do it, but screw that. I mean, do it anytime. Let's just say, hi, Saturday, do you want to get together? Let's maybe go do something. I haven't seen you guys in forever. Like, parents, these are people that gave up part of their lives for us, Obviously, you could argue like, okay, I didn't ask to be brought into the world and all that kind of stuff, but still, they were there for you, and they've sacrificed a lot for you. They've given you a huge chunk of your life that you can not repay them for. I mean, it's ridiculous. But yeah, this video got very serious very quickly, and like I said, it's a topic that's very close to my heart, about family and relationships, and to hear people that's like not talking to their parents, or not like wanting to talk to them, cutting off relationships, and like for no reason, especially for no reason. If there's like a clear-cut reason, look, I understand. You've got to look after yourself, and you've got to shield maybe your family, from that family member that's causing stuff to you. But yeah, it's a very tricky question, to answer, and I think this has been one of my longest and most serious videos. But I think it's definitely something that I wanted to talk about. This is what we're about, on the channel, is about connecting people and connecting us with ourselves as well, and with each other, sharing experiences with each other. I took down a trip down memory lane, just talking about this, and it was so nice. So I just want to say thank you again to Fred Sanford for the suggestion for the topic. It's a really very it was a very special video for this one. But yeah, that's gonna be it for today's video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and my thoughts on it. Feel free, obviously, to leave your thoughts down in the comment section below. I'll gladly get back to you and we can talk over there. And also, like I said, feel free to leave your own suggestion on a topic you'd like to see maybe in a future video. We can cover it over there. That's gonna be it for this one, guys. Take care. I love you all. Have a great day. Bye bye.